name's Miss Nicholls. I'm going to be reading The Body, Chapter 4. I dodged around a bike chained to a clothesline and a crushed pot plant that must have fallen from a windowsill or a balcony, kicked by one of the men. My crutches sloshed into small puddles and cold rain trickled down my neck and back. Magic strained at her collar, excited to be outside in the rain and breeze. I moved quickly towards the door of the bin shed and peeked inside, alert for human shapes. The shed was about 3 metres wide and 4 metres long. It was empty. The wheelie bins must have been out in the front of the building, lined up on the curb. I crept across the cracked pavers on the floor of the shadowy shed. Wind flurried outside, rustling the dead vines around and blowing a shiver right through me. Magic made a strange, high-pitched whine, and I stopped for a moment, loosening my grip on her lead. This is the dumbest thing I've ever done, I thought. And according to Mum, I had done some pretty dumb stuff recently. This is so typical of you, Sam. Even when she wasn't with me, her voice was there. Can you please just once try and do the right thing? Make good choices. I made it to the doorway on the other side of the shed. I had a clear view of the ground beneath the tree where the man had fallen. The patchy grass was painted with the knobbly shadows of the tree branches, but the body was gone. The man had either crawled away or someone had taken him. It seemed to me that his crawling days were over, so that left only one possibility. I spied down the narrow driveway at the side of the building, just wide enough for a vehicle and blocked by a tall double gate. I had seen the caretaker's dirty ute enter the yard earlier in the week. I prayed that Magic would bark and bite rather than lick and sniff if we came upon the large man under the black umbrella. I eased my way out into the starless night, moving slowly towards the place where the smaller man had landed. I looked behind me and left and right, but there were no signs of life. I stopped and leaned heavily on my crutches. I pushed Magic's bottom down again and the dog fell, spread-eagled in the mud. I stopped and leaned heavily on my crutches. I pushed Magic's bottom down again and the dog fell, spread-eagled in the mud like a bearskin rug. I thought about how my father might investigate a crime scene like this. I was pretty sure that's what it was. Someone had pushed that man and then taken the body in the time it took me to get downstairs. I had never been at a crime scene before. God is in the details. That was number 1 in Harry Garner's 10 Commandments of Crime Reporting, an article that had been published about my father in the Herald a couple of years ago. I had the clipping folded up in my wallet and I read all the time. God is in the details. Don't miss a thing. I heard my dad whisper to me. I had been probing him about his work all week. He told me there are a couple of key things he focused on at a crime scene in order to describe it clearly for his readers. Photograph and document the scene without contaminating it. Take note of any obvious physical evidence like weapons or footprints and biological evidence like blood, hair and other tissues. I noticed small dark spatters on the grass, either mud or blood. I took a shot on my phone. It made a loud shh sound as it snapped and I flicked it to mute. There was a shallow depression in the dirt where the man had landed. The weight of his life etched into the earth. I felt tears prick my eyelids. I swallowed hard, laid down as far as my leg would allow, and took a couple of shots at the hollow in the ground. I touched the earth and wondered who the man was, if he'd have kids, if he left any mark on the world other than this one in the backyard of a shabby apartment building in a pretty bad part of the city. I picked up a small piece of paper from the ground, a receipt wet through from the rain and impossible to read. Magic yawned excitedly and looked as though she wanted to eat it. Maybe it was evidence or just something that blew out of a bin. I took a photo and pocketed the receipt carefully so as not to tear it. As I straightened up, there was a dull thud somewhere nearby. I probably should have run, but instead I froze, not breathing. I waited for a shadow or a voice. Seconds ticked by, no other sounds. I looked up at Harry's apartment, the window still ajar. I half expected to see someone looking down at me. I scanned the other windows and balconies. All of them were closed against the cold and the rain. I turned my attention to the ground once more. I wondered if I had compromised the crime scene. Maybe the footprints of my crutches had destroyed vital evidence. Something glinted in the lamplight, a couple of metres away. I moved closer, careful not to tread on the man's indent. It was the arm from a pair of glasses. I picked the evidence up by the very tip, trying not to contaminate it with my fingerprints, and slipped it into my pocket. There was a sound, and I looked up to see one of the large gates at the side of the building beginning to open. I panicked. Magic, come, I whispered, pulling the dog to her feet by the lead. I crushed awkwardly towards the door of the apartment building. What if it's Help? I wondered. What if it's Harry? That's what would happen in Harry Garner's Crime Reporter, my comic book series. I've been making the books for 3 years and I was up to issue 7. I wasn't that good at drawing at first, but I was getting better. In the books, Harry always saved the day, or the night. But I was not in a comic book and I wasn't taking any chances. I imagined death shadowing me as I lunged with my crutches, reaching ahead and swinging my legs forward. Magic waddled double time to keep up, a couple of metres before I reached the door to the building. I launched my crutches forward, smelling safety, and then slipped into the mud, sending me sliding onto the ground. I broke my fall with the palms of my hand and my bandaged right knee. Pain surged through me, and I lost my grip on Magic's lead. But fear picked me up and sent me hopping to the door. I opened it, and the plastic gun fell out onto the mud. "Come, girl," I pleaded with Magic. "Come." She ambled over, squeezed through the gap, and I eased the door shut behind me, the bottom of it grating against concrete. I crouched down the narrow corridor to the foyer. I should have gone through the double doors and directly to the police station, but I didn't want to be out on the streets of an unknown city hobbling on crutches at 2:30 in the morning. What if the man had an accomplice who was waiting out the front? I eyeballed the lift that my father had strictly forbidden me to travel in. It was waiting there, calling me. My arms were tingling and numb, the top of my crutches cutting the blood flow, and it was wet and cold. I didn't know if I could make it all the way upstairs, and I was 94% sure that Magic couldn't. I thought of the person coming through the gate in the backyard. I was pretty sure it was the creepy man with the umbrella, so I swung my leg forward and pulled the heavy old-fashioned lift open. Magic shuffled in, and I crouched after her into the tiniest place, the smallest lift I had ever been in. I hit the 5 button and prayed that I was doing the right thing. The lift didn't move, so I tapped the button 10 times in quick succession like it was my Xbox controller when the game wouldn't load. Finally, it roared upwards. I watched through the wire mesh window as the floor slowly, painfully drifted by. I wondered if I'd been faster crouching up the stairs if the man would walk up and be waiting for me at the top. Why didn't you go to the police, I thought, and over, the question rattling and squeaking through my brain like the lift through the shaft. After what felt like an hour, we arrived at level 5, and the lift made a soft, out-tuned ding. I peered through the narrow window in the door. Looking left and right, I couldn't see anyone, only the doors to 5A and 5B, and in between the fire hose reel cupboard. I wondered if I'd already called the lift from the foyer, just in case. I pressed the button for every floor so that it would take forever to get down. I shoved open the door, and Magic waddled out. I crashed across to Harry's apartment, inserted the key, and twisted. Magic pushed the door open with her nose, barreled past me, and slurped water noisily from a 4-litre ice cream container on the kitchenette floor. I clicked the door quietly closed, my chest burning, feet freezing, listening for dear life. Magic collapsed to the floor. Her breathing soared through the air, making it difficult to listen for the lift or for noises on the staircase. "Shh," I told her, but the chubby brown dog kept wheezing. I called out, "Harry," and checked the bedroom and bathroom again. Then I stood, watching the door for a couple of minutes, listening. I checked my phone. Nothing. Harry will be back soon, I thought. I'll just pop out and grab some milk. That's what he said. I shouldn't have asked him all these personal questions. I'd sent him away. It was my fault. I heard the distant sound of a timber door grating the concrete 5 floors down.